Welcome to Okay, Now What? I'm your host, Kate Gladden, episode 10. This is the show for people who know life doesn't happen to you, life happens, and the impact it has is up to you. Well, hello, beautiful people. It is mixed emotions, I guess, for me today to be joining you all. Don't worry, I'm happy to be recording this podcast for you guys, but it's certainly been a roller coaster of worry, stress, and anxiety over the past few days in particular, as my new beautiful hometown, Sheridan, surrounded by the beautiful Bighorn Mountains, unfortunately has been facing a lot of what I'd call bushfires as an Australian. But I guess they call forest fires or wildfires here. It's been pretty devastating to see some towns nearly be on the brink of having to be evacuated and potentially lose homes. And unfortunately, some people have lost their homes. And just across the road from us, there's even, some people that have been put in alert status of getting ready to go. And so here we are. We've just bought our new beautiful dream property, place, home. Like, it's so good. And it almost has been feeling too good to be true. And then something like this happens, and it's very easy for anxiety to be like, see, I told you it is too good to be true. Your house is going to burn down. And it's very easy to let your mind run wild when, you might not be facing literally a wildfire, a few miles away from your house, but we all have a version of that kind of event going on or has recently gone on in our lives that we just don't really have a lot of control over, right? I can't just snap my fingers and make the fire go away. But I do want to give, before we go any further, just a huge shout out to all the emergency personnel and people that have literally been risking their lives in fighting this fire. I can see it up, like normally I see the mountains from where I sit here in my office. I can't even see them. There's that much smoke out there. It kind of sits in your lungs when you go outside. But those brave people who are working tirelessly around the clock to help keep not only properties and people safe, but also all the farm animals and wildlife that also call this place home. So just wanted to give my complete gratitude to all those people out there. But if we circle back around to this idea of, we are all going to face time and time again, and sometimes it just feels like we go through chapters of life where it's happening a lot, where we're just getting hit with these situations that we just don't have a lot of control over. And I want you to think about what's that happening in your life for you right now. It could be like a diagnosis, right? And you're just sitting there in that anxiety of waiting for the results, or maybe you're going through treatment for some sort of cancer or situation where, like, you're just trying to wait to see if the results or the treatment ends up working, right? And all you can do is just show up for that treatment. Or maybe your company is under investigation for violating some regulation. It's like, oh God, are we going to be have to face legal action against this? Or like any military wives out there, like I once was, maybe it's, or partners, it's like, is my husband or partner going to come home on deployment on time? Or am I going to wake up to that next call that his flight's been delayed another month or two? Or, whether am I going to get fired or lose my job for this huge mistake I made, or the fact that I missed out on this, I guess, big deal that we were going for, or even more daily things that we can like feel kind of helpless about controlling. Like you had a really nice date out with someone, but you're like, are they really going to now text me or want to see me again? Or, just whether, maybe you've recorded a demo CD or something. Do we even do those days? I don't think CDs exist anymore, but maybe you're a creative person. You're trying to put yourself out there and see if you can land that record deal or that gig or that client. And am I going to hear back? And I just want to help remind you how to take your control back over a situation that you're facing that you don't really have a lot of control over, and potentially has some pretty dire consequences if we are to think of worst case scenario. And in these moments, like what I've had to keep reminding myself over these past few days, because I've gone from feeling pretty like, okay, this is fine. We've got this. Our house is going to be okay, to spiraling into panicking over like, what's our house insurance? And I'll be like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. And so it's how do we stay in that healthy balance of natural emotions you're going to feel when you're facing a hard circumstance like this, but without letting it completely spiral. And so what I have to keep reminding myself is like, I cannot control what's happening around me right now, but I can control how I experience this weekend and these circumstances and who I choose to be, how I choose to show up. That is within my control, just like it is within your control for any situation. You might not be able to control what's going on around you, but how you choose to experience and who you choose to be is your choice. And so what I want to give you now, like the top 5 kind of strategies or tips that I've been practicing over this weekend as I watched the beautiful mountains burn around me with the possibility of it spreading into our towns. And the first one I want to give you is to understand that our brains are wired for survival. First and foremost, the fastest part of our brain where all those automatic thoughts will come up from the second that we hear about such a dire circumstance is going to come from that survival brain. So it really is natural for our brains to kind of jump to worst case scenario or start spiraling and overthinking things on it as a knee-jerk reaction. Right. So I think it's unrealistic, or at least for me, I have to remind myself, like, my brain's like, oh my God, the house is going to burn down and you're going to have enough insurance and you're going to be broke and you're not going to have anywhere to live. And it just like spiral, 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 spiral. I just have to be like, okay, I see you, brain. I see you, little survival brain, trying to feel like you have to go to the absolute worst risk and worst case scenario. It's not because I'm a negative thinker. It's just I have this brain wired for survival. And also it's wired to hate uncertainty. The brain loves closure and certainty because that's how it can best predict what's going to happen. So it's very easy to kind of keep looping over what's going to happen, what's going to happen. And it kind of wants this answer, but you actually can't get an answer on what's going to happen next, really, for any given moment. Every uncertain next moment is uncertain, but especially moments like this where there's so much changing, it's depending on the weather and the wind and all these extra factors. But I think it's important to understand that because I feel like sometimes when we start to jump to worst case scenario, it's easy to think like, oh, my brain's being a fortune teller. Like there must be a reason that I'm thinking this thing might happen. Like I really am going to lose my job, or I really am going to, my treatment really isn't going to work, or I really am going to have the worst stage of cancer. Like this is like a premonition, but really it's not. It's just your brain being a human brain and being wired for survival. So it feels like it has to alert us like, hey, this thing could happen. This thing could happen. This thing could happen. But there's absolutely nothing we can do in the present moment about this thing that could happen in the future. It's all kind of made up, so we can't really solve for it. And I think what helps me is to remember that, like, if that thing actually happens, if our house actually does catch on fire, Nate and I have our plan. We're capable of handling it. We might not be able to save our house, but we can at least save ourselves, get out of here. Like, if these things happen, I will figure it out. So I think we have to, in any circumstances that are out of your control and particularly uncertain, you have to bring it back to the present moment of what actually is happening in reality, in the world, in this moment, and not what's just happening in your mind, in your imagination, in this made up future. So I think I want to point that out. It's natural the brain wants to spiral, jump to worst case scenario. So you've got to let some anxiety kind of be there. We can't always stop those automatic negative thoughts. But I also feel like you want to feel some heavy, sad, disappointed emotions sometimes. You don't want to feel good about, I want to feel really happy about I've been diagnosed with cancer, or my mum has been, or I want to feel really happy that, we might potentially lose this big client, or, be sued for a regulation we accidentally misstepped, or I want to feel really happy that, I don't know when my husband's going to come home from deployment. Like we naturally want to feel some sad emotions about this because we love and care about those things that are on the line. And so I think what's also helped me is just to make space for a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of sadness. Like I'm literally watching some of the most beautiful part of this country burn down, be covered in smoke. I think of those animals out there, like losing their homes with the trees and just the beauty of it, like charcoal black. And that makes me sad. And I want to feel sad about this. This is like I'm willing to feel sad because I care about these mountains and I want them better taken care of, but I can't control that right now. But rather than trying to push that away or escape it, I kind of think of it as like carrying around like a heavy purse or something where it's like, I'm just going to feel some sadness today and a little bit of anxiety today and make space for my full human experience. I want to be in this situation because I want to live in Sheridan. I want to live by the mountains. I want to live in this community, which I look around and is showing me just how resilient it can be, and neighbors checking on each other and just reminding like myself, it really is during some of the worst times that we see some of the best of humanity. So I want to feel sad and a little bit anxious. Actually, when you accept and make space for your emotions, it actually helps to make it less intense than trying to resist or escape them. So that's tip number one. Know your brain will naturally get anxious. It's wired for survival. And if there's any threat to that, whether it's emotional or actual physical threat, it's going to bring up, say, anxiety or sadness. Make space for that. And then bring yourself back to the present moment by practicing tip number two. And that is some sort of grounding exercise and deep breathing. Now, I'm sure you've heard this breathing tip before, and I'm sure you've also gone, yeah, sure, and then not actually practice the breathing. That's what I notice a lot, even in myself. I'm like, I don't have time to breathe right now. I need to go back on Facebook and read another post about the fires, when really that's the exact opposite. My brain wants that because it's trying to find answers, but I can't give it answers right now. But I can give it slow breathing, because breath work is the fastest and basically only way to really calm down your central nervous system, the part of your fight or flight that's coming from that survival brain. You can't out logic that. You can only feel your way through it. And what happens is when we take those slower, deep breaths, whether it's inhale for 4, hold for 1, and exhale for 8, that's the fastest way for your body to then start signaling to the brain, like, hey, there is no real danger here right now. Like, we are safe and okay. Because if you think about it, we couldn't be taking those slower, deep breaths if we're actually running from fire or a tiger. In those moments, we want that dump of adrenaline to give us that superhuman strength and energy to get out of that danger. But when it's not even real and in the present moment, we need to calm it back down and bring us back to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and relax kind of state in your body, which is going to be what really will help you most have resilience to handle the situation rather than completely spiraling. So please, whether you download the Calm app, Insight Timer, go on YouTube, make time to do some slower breath work, some sort of closing your eyes. They always say do something where your exhale is longer than your inhale. That's how you bring it down to a calmer state. Because often when we're stressed and panic, we hold our breath in and we need to exhale all that expired air out of our lung and make space for new, fresh air in your lungs to help you keep breathing clearly. And, that's kind of been hard. It's been kind of sad with how much smoke there is even in our house. It's been a little smelly and smoky. But I did a beautiful yoga class earlier today, and that was just what I needed with the deep breathing. Also, some grounding exercises that can help is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, where you look for 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can taste. No, 1 thing you can taste. What scent am I missing? I said 1, see, hear, touch, smell. Oh my gosh, I forgot the extra scent. I'm sure for anyone watching that looked like I said I was doing like Simon Says with trying to touch everything and remember what scent I was missing. That's hilarious. Okay, so really it sounds silly and I obviously just botched it then, but I do this with all my clients I coach with. When they start to spiral on me, I'm like, hey, bring it back here with me. Tell me, and sometimes I narrow it down a little. Just tell me 3 things you can see, 3 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. And immediately I see them kind of bring themselves back into this moment. Their eyes stop going to their head and they're starting to like look around and engage in the moment, because our senses can only ever exist in the present moment. And so it's really powerful to still and slow yourself down and really show yourself like in this moment, actually, they really are okay. So that's really helpful to calm the nervous system. And then I also, when I'm really anxious, I find it helpful to just get out and do some exercise. So over the weekend, I was doing my elliptical machine, my reformer Pilates, just trying to burn off some of that anxiety. I'm a person that's more naturally wired to be anxious. So exercise is just my usual antidote to burn off some of that anxiety. But I also did like hot yoga. So it's trying to find this balance of like burning it off, but then also calming it down. So whatever that version is for you, don't forget to move your body. I always think of emotion. It's like energy in motion. It just needs to process through and allow it to get through your body. Often we keep it stuck and we stuff ourselves full of food or grab our phones and disconnect from our body, when really, when we're very feeling emotions intensely, we want to go into our bodies, calm it down, let that emotion kind of process through and tell yourself, I'm willing to feel this. I'm willing to feel this. This is okay. Like uncomfortable emotions. I was going to call them negative emotions, but I don't even think they're negative, because a lot of these emotions come from some of the best parts of life, like, daring to go after our goals, or take chances in love and relationships, or, live by the mountains. And so if I want to live by the mountains, I've got to risk being near wildfires sometimes. And I'm willing to do that for the joy I get from the beauty of this place. So that's tip number 2. Do things to calm your nervous system down, including grounding exercises, deep breathing, exercise and stretching, yoga. All of those things are there to help your body process that emotion and actually do them. Don't just read about them or listen to me saying them. Go do something. Just 10 minutes, just 5 minutes will make a difference when you're feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. Number 3 is that I find really helpful when, my brain really wants to worry, is to kind of really keep it in perspective. Because I'm not going to say that worry is totally pointless. I feel like worry to a point serves a purpose. It can kind of alert your brain, hey, pay attention here. There's a bit of a risk. What can we do about it? And I think that's a powerful question. What can we do to protect ourselves or take care of myself right now? Nate and I went around and we kind of looked around because there's been embers and stuff coming into our yard. So just clearing that up and, putting the sprinklers on. I have, the app that alerts me when there's any changes in the fire. So we're made aware and we're up to date on the latest information. But just like anything, if you let it go too far, it actually becomes a weakness and causes just more stress, anxiety, and worry, and just looping out in anxiety. And that's what causes that panic attack or that meltdown. So you've got to keep it in that healthy balance and not let it go so far where you get the alert on the latest update of the fires, but then that turns into scrolling on Facebook and the next post and the next thing and the percentages and the likelihood and didn't you hear? And oh my gosh, like there's always those doom gloomsday kind of people online. And again, I don't judge them. I just know they're running off their survival instincts of feeling like it's helpful to panic about everything. But I think you got to keep it in that healthy balance. And so what I remind myself when my brain's like, we have to worry right now, though, we might actually lose our house or these beautiful mountains. And there's just so much going on out of my control. We need to stress and worry. I'm like, hey, brain, we are doing everything that we need to do right now that's within our control. Number one thing, worry about what's in your control. Go do something about it. And then you just got to let it go. Anything else beyond that? Maybe you have done all you can and you're taking all the vitamins to supplement your treatment, or you're doing all the things that your doctor says you should to take care of your body, or, you're doing all that you can to learn legally what your rights are in a court case against something, or you're doing what you can to stay connected to your husband that's stuck overseas on a trip, or whatever it is. Like anything beyond that, you've just got to let it go. And if your brain resists it, and I always have to remind my brain, hey, the worst thing that's ever going to happen in any scenario to me is negative emotion, right? This is a mind-bendy concept. I've taught it before a couple times, but really think about this. If my house was to burn down, heaven forbid, the worst part wouldn't even be the house burning down, the ashes on the ground. It would be the emotion I would feel, the despair, the sadness, the shock, the grief. That's would be the worst part of it all. That's how we experience this world, through our feelings that we have about it, based on the thoughts we have about that situation. And I do want to have a lot of sad, grieving thoughts if we were to ever to lose this beautiful house that we now have. I would want to feel a lot of sadness and grief over that. But that is the worst thing that would happen, all that uncomfortable emotion. The worst thing that would happen if you did land yourself in a financial situation or a legal situation where there's a lot of uncertainty and you do end up getting sued or losing money in an investment. Again, the worst you would feel is maybe overwhelmed, ashamed, frustrated, helpless, insert whatever emotion. But they're all just emotions, just uncomfortable, hard, intense emotions. But it doesn't make any sense then for your brain to be like, oh no, we might experience all this terrible emotion that we better create all of that ahead of time and just sit here in anxiety and uncomfortable emotion and spiral into worry. Like, you're actually then creating worst case scenario ahead of time, yet there's actually nothing you can even do about it because you're worrying about made up scenarios. Well, if that thing actually happens and you have all that uncomfortable hard emotion about it, you can actually then start to work through it, though, because the situation has happened. And as humans, we're very capable at being resourceful and being able to respond and problem solve and be resilient once we're in situations that actually give us all the answers we need to be resilient, to start problem solving, to allow ourselves to feel our feelings. So just be onto yourself. If your brain wants to spiral into worry and panic and anxiety because it's like, this thing could happen and it would be terrible. Remember the most terrible part about it would be the emotion that you would feel, which would just be like a similar uncomfortable version of what you're already feeling now. And sitting here in worry and panic and spiraling, like, disconnects you from the parts of your life that are still meaningful and happening, even though there's these side circumstances going on. Like, yes, there's a fire surrounding us right now, but I wasn't about to spend it all in panic and miss out on just spending time connecting with Nate and going for a walk with Jaku and just being present and working on my business and coaching my students. If I was sitting there spiraling into panic, I would miss out on all the parts of my life that are still meaningful, even in this hard situation. And the same happens when you start spiraling into panic and worry. You start really being able to show up in your relationship or for your kids or your workplace, or suddenly you like forget more things and then there's more problems, or you run late, or you just like are not doing the things that take care of your physical and mental health. Like I mentioned, the exercise, the yoga, the deep breathing. So I'm not saying worry is a completely useless thing. Every emotion we feel as humans, one served a purpose to our survival. And I feel like that worry, anxiety, it just alerts us like, hey, there's a risk here you need to take care of. But once you've done everything within your control to take care of it, remind yourself the worst thing that'll happen is just some uncomfortable emotion. Makes zero sense to sit here creating more of it now, when I have the opportunity to create more peace, calm, connection with things and people that I care about right now that are going to help me be more resilient. So definitely keep that in mind. Number 4, something that I really love. There's a few things that I like to remind myself of when my brain is just like spiraling into worst case scenario, or the negatives, or the risks and things that are going on around me. Like, what if I really do lose my job and then I won't have any income and then I won't be able to afford my place I'm renting, and then I'll end up homeless and then my parents are going to like judge me, or whatever it is. Like, or in my case, what if we lose our house and we're homeless? I have to remind myself, like, I love asking the question to help open my brain back up to not just worst case scenario, is I like to ask myself, what else is true right now? Because even though my brain wants to be like, the whole house is going to burn down, what else is true opens it up to also see, like, there's over 600 firefighters from around the country out there, a few miles away from me right now, battling this fire. That's amazing. These people are trained to do this. That's what else is true. This is not completely under their control, but they're ready to fight it with all that they have. What else is true is this amazing team kept it out of this town called Dayton, where I am telling you the fire was just like right on the brink there. Town is super close into the mountains. And unbelievably and admirably, they seem to have kept it out of the town of Dayton. For now, Dayton is way closer to that fire than we are. If they can keep it out of Dayton, they can keep it out of here. What else is true is the wind is very calm right now, and it might stay this way for a long time, which is great. It's really good fire weather when you have calm winds. What else is true is we have home insurance. There's literally companies that try and help you out during tragedies like this if something were to ever happen. So that's what else is true. It's not going to like we're going to end up with no home and absolutely nothing. What else is true is that Nate and I, like, we have each other, we have Jakku. Like, the fire is not going to take that from us. We can lose everything and we'll still have each other. And what else is true is that other people I know, like, they've had their houses burned down before and they've been able to rebuild their life and move forward in a positive way and not let that circumstance define the rest of their life forever. So when you start to spiral and just the negative stuff, really challenge yourself. Like, what else is true right now? What else? What are the positives or the potential good things that could lead to good outcomes? What am I missing here? And just challenge your brain if you need to journal it and write it down, just to really see things differently. And I think I also like to tell myself, like, my brain's like, it's not going to be okay. I like to talk back and be like, you know what? It may not be okay, in the sense, like, this house may burn down. You may lose your job, or someone you love really may end up with that terminal cancer. Like, the situation may not be okay for that time, for a while, maybe for a few years, but you will be okay. It may not be okay, but I will be okay. I love that saying because it reminds you that you will always have you. You will always have yourself. And as a human, you have been built to adapt, to evolve under stress, under adversity, under pain. And so with time, you will get through this. You will find a place where you will be okay. This house may be long gone, but as a person and as a human and everything, like, I will be okay. I will find a way to respond to this circumstance in a way that doesn't forever taint the rest of my life. Now, I want to say the chances of this actually burning down are very, very slim. So please know when I record this, I'm not in any serious danger. I'm just letting you hear my internal thoughts and voices for the last couple of days as we face this fire. I think it's interesting too. I was talking to Nate, and the interesting thing is anyone's house can go up in flames at any moment. It's just interesting when the danger really literally is on the horizon of our house and just seeing it looming there. I think it's really the difference of, when you have an abrupt accident that causes severe injury versus, getting a diagnosis that slowly kind of injures and takes away your quality of life. It's very fascinating. It's just because it's right visibly in front of us. My brain wants to keep looping on the house could burn down. But anyway, just thought that was fascinating. And I think the last thing, number 5, is that it's very easy to be like, everything's going wrong, stuff's going wrong, this isn't how it's supposed to be. But the truth is, what we all have to remember is adversity, loss, pain, struggle. It is a built-in part of the human experience. It has been since day one, and it will be to the end of the day. And this contrast of, the ability to feel love, but also feel loss, or the ability to feel connection versus rejection, and just the contrast of the good and the bad times we go through in life. I think the contrast is needed to give us the perspective that brings out the best in our humanness. When things are always going our way, we're always winning, getting lots of attention and money, and just life's smooth sailing. It's almost easy to get a little complacent, a little forgetting what matters most in life. Like, oh, I'm going to go to this next fancy thing and not check in on my mom, or make time to connect with that friend, or take care of my body and go for a run. Like, it's easy to get caught up in all of that. But I think it's times where you're humbled to remember as a human, you kind of are infallible. You are, um, wait, I think it's not supposed to say you're not infallible. AKA, you're not invincible. You are somewhat vulnerable and fragile at times, and you can lose things you love and people you love, and experiences won't always go according to how you would like them to, no matter how hard you try, how hard you prepare, how careful you are. And I think that knowing that keeps us a little more humble and grateful for when things are going good, because we know that they could very easily at any given moment start going bad or turning into struggle or loss. I think it's also interesting, like there's always the contrast of the seasons. And I think about when I first moved to Wyoming, it was after a pretty bitter winter that they had. And so many people complained about the snow when I got there, and I was just praying for it because I love snow. And if you've been listening for a while, you'll know that. And, now the reason that a lot of the fire is so bad is because we had then the following winter of quite a dry winter with not much snow. And then we've had a dry summer with not much rain. And so the ground is just so dry and just very hazardous for fire. And so they were once praying for it not to snow much, and now we're praying for it to start snowing, because that's basically what the firefighters have said will really put out this fire once and for all, is some snow. So I think it helps keep things in perspective, when we're going to be in the bitter cold again, because it will come, just like hard times will come. Kind of knowing we were once praying for snow like this, and now we're praying for the heat and the fires to go away. And so I think it's just remembering life is a contrast of experience. It won't always be good, but it won't always be bad. It won't always be bitter. It won't always be cold. But I feel like the cold times can help us appreciate some of the good times, and also know there's pros and cons to all different experiences. So I love this saying. I can't remember where I first heard it, but it's to say yes to every experience in your life as if you have chosen it. Because for one reason or another, life has chosen it for you. And I really believe that we aren't given circumstances that we're not strong enough to handle. And in fact, they become part of our growth and our ability to contribute and connect more with our human experiences when we go through hard things. So although I would not wish these fires upon anyone, and I hate that they've been put upon our beautiful mountains and our community, you have a version of a fire that's happening in your life or has happened in your life, whether it's a death, a divorce, or a diagnosis. We all have fires that we can't control, but who we choose to be and how we choose to experience those circumstances really is up to us. So stay focused on being in the present moment. Your brain will naturally do otherwise, but just keep bringing it back to present moment and really narrow your lens. So the only moment you need to handle is the one you're in right now. Once you get to that future moment, if that thing happens, then you'll be able to handle that. You'll have the resources and capability because it's actually happening. But for now, just bring your lens back to focusing on today, this hour, this moment, now. That's all you need to handle. And that's all you need to figure out. And the worst thing that'll ever happen is some uncomfortable emotion. So do not let yourself spiral into the anxiety, but bring it back to just gratitude and connection to the meaningful things that are still ever present in your life, even when the tough stuff is happening. Okay. Hope that was helpful to you guys, beautiful people. And I cannot wait to see you back here next week for another episode of Okay, Now What?